The ground beneath Castle Ironhold had been silent for 300 years. The fortress stood proud on the northern border, its walls thick and its towers tall. No army had ever broken through its gates. No siege had ever lasted long enough to starve its people. The humans who lived there believed they were safe from any threat that walked upon the earth. But Gruck the Clever was not planning to walk upon the earth. He was planning to go under it. Deep in the Blackstone Mountains, where the Goblin clans had hidden for generations, Gruck gathered his engineers. They were small creatures with green skin and yellow eyes. Most races considered them weak and stupid. The elves laughed at them. The dwarves ignored them. The humans barely remembered they existed. This was a mistake. Gruck had spent 40 years studying the old tunnels. He had mapped every cave system within 100 miles of Castle Ironhold. He had calculated the distance, measured the rock hardness, and planned the perfect route. His tunnel would start from a hidden cave in the western hills and travel straight under the castle foundations. The digging began in the spring. 2,000 goblin workers moved earth and stone in complete silence. They used special tools wrapped in leather to muffle the sound. They carried the dirt in small bags, spreading it across distant valleys where no one would notice. The operation was perfect in every way. 6 months passed. The tunnel grew longer each day. Gruck personally inspected every section, checking for weakness in the walls and ceiling. He was careful, patient, and absolutely certain of his success. On the night of the autumn full moon, the tunnel reached its final position. Gruck and his warriors gathered in the darkness below Castle Ironhold. Above them, only 15 feet of earth and stone separated them from the castle courtyard. The humans were sleeping in their beds, completely unaware of the army beneath their feet. Gruck smiled his sharp-toothed smile. Tomorrow night, they would break through. Tomorrow night, Castle Ironhold would fall. But there was something Gruck did not know. Something no goblin had ever understood about humans. In the castle above, a young soldier named Marcus could not sleep. He had been walking the lower halls when he felt something strange, a vibration in the floor. A sound so quiet that most people would never notice it. Marcus was not most people. He had grown up in the mining towns of the south, where his father and grandfather had dug for iron ore. He knew the sounds that came from underground. He knew what it meant when the earth whispered secrets. He pressed his ear against the stone floor and listened. What he heard made his blood run cold. Scratching, tapping, movement. Something was digging beneath the castle. Marcus ran to wake his commander, Captain Elena Blackwood. She was a woman of 40 winters, scarred from a dozen battles. When Marcus told her what he had heard, she did not laugh or dismiss him. Instead, she followed him to the lower halls and listened for herself. Her face grew serious. She had heard stories of goblin tunnelers from the old wars, stories that most soldiers considered legends. But Elena had learned long ago that legends often held truth. Within the hour, she had gathered her officers in the war room. The castle held 300 soldiers and another 200 townspeople. If the goblins broke through in force, the surprise attack could be devastating. But Elena was not planning to wait for them. She called for the castle engineer, an old man named Thomas, who had built siege weapons for the king's army. She explained the situation and asked him one simple question. "Can we collapse their tunnel?" Thomas thought for a long moment. Then he began to smile. The humans worked through the night. They did not panic. They did not argue. They simply did what needed to be done. This was the human way. When faced with disaster, they became calm. When faced with death, they became dangerous. Thomas directed teams to drill small holes in the courtyard floor. They were careful to make no noise that might alert the goblins below. Through these holes, they poured a mixture of oil and tar into the earth. The liquid seeped downward, soaking into the soil above the tunnel. At the same time, other teams prepared barrels of water mixed with quicklime, a powder that expanded when wet. They positioned these barrels around the courtyard, ready to pour their contents into the holes at a moment's notice. Elena organized her soldiers into 3 groups. The first would guard the main tunnel exit point. The second would sweep through the lower castle, searching for any goblins that might break through elsewhere. The third would wait in reserve, ready to respond to any unexpected development. By morning, the trap was set. Gruck spent the day preparing his warriors. He gave speeches about glory and revenge. He reminded them of all the times the surface races had hunted and killed their people. Tonight, he promised, the goblins would finally have their victory. As darkness fell, Gruck gave the order. His strongest workers began breaking through the final layer of earth and stone. The sound was loud now, but it did not matter. Speed was more important than silence. The first goblin head appeared through the hole in the courtyard floor. Yellow eyes blinked in the moonlight, looking around for enemies. He saw none. The courtyard appeared empty. The goblin climbed out and signaled to his brothers below. More goblins followed, pouring out of the tunnel like water from a broken dam. 10, 20, 50, 100. They spread across the courtyard, weapons ready, waiting for Gruck to lead the charge. Gruck emerged last, his clever eyes scanning the castle walls. Something felt wrong. The windows were dark. The guards were absent. Where were the humans? Then he smelled it. Oil. Tar. The courtyard reeked of it. Gruck opened his mouth to shout a warning. He was too late. Elena gave the signal. Archers appeared on the walls and released flaming arrows into the courtyard. The oil-soaked ground erupted in fire. Goblins screamed as flames consumed them. Those who tried to flee back into the tunnel found their escape route blocked by soldiers with spears and shields. At the same moment, workers poured the quickite mixture into the drill holes. The powder expanded rapidly underground, filling the tunnel with a substance harder than stone. Hundreds of goblins waiting below were trapped, crushed, buried alive. The battle in the courtyard lasted less than 10 minutes. The goblins fought bravely, but they were surrounded, burning and leaderless. Gruck fell with 3 arrows in his chest, his clever plans destroyed by human adaptability. When the sun rose, Castle Ironhold still stood. The humans had lost only 12 soldiers. The goblin army had been completely destroyed. News of the victory spread quickly. Within weeks, every kingdom knew what had happened. The goblins had launched their greatest attack in 3 centuries, using their most advanced engineering, and the humans had defeated them in a single night. The other races were shocked. The elves had always considered humans to be short-lived and simple. The dwarves had always viewed them as poor builders and weak fighters. Even the goblins had believed that humans were predictable and slow to react. They were all wrong. What made humans dangerous was not their strength or their magic. It was their ability to adapt. When Marcus heard the sound from underground, he did not ignore it. When Elena learned of the threat, she did not wait for it to arrive. When Thomas was asked to solve an impossible problem, he found a solution in hours. This was the human gift. This was why every race that had ever underestimated them had come to regret it. In the goblin caves, the survivors spoke of that night with fear and wonder. They had believed their plan was perfect. They had believed the humans would never suspect the attack from below. They had believed wrong. The tunnel project had taken 6 months of planning and work. The human counterattack had been organized in 6 hours. This was the difference that mattered. This was why humans ruled more land than any other race, despite their short lives and weak bodies. Castle Ironhold became a legend. Soldiers came from distant kingdoms to study its defenses and learn from Captain Elena's tactics. She taught them the same lesson that every human commander had learned through blood and sacrifice. Never assume you are safe. Never believe your enemy is stupid. And never, ever underestimate the creativity of desperate people working together. Thomas the engineer was given a noble title and a fortune in gold. He used the money to establish a school for military engineering. His students went on to build defenses for castles across the realm, always remembering the lesson of Ironhold. Marcus was promoted to sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain of his own company. He trained his soldiers to listen for sounds that other people missed. He taught them that awareness was more valuable than armor. And deep underground, in the collapsed tunnels beneath Castle Ironhold, the bones of Gruck the Clever served as a warning to any goblin who might dream of attacking humanity again. Some races were blessed with eternal life. Some were blessed with powerful magic. Some were blessed with bodies of stone or claws of steel. Humans were blessed with something different, something that could not be measured or counted, something that every other race had failed to understand until it was too late. They were blessed with the ability to surprise their enemies, to think faster, work harder, and fight dirtier than anyone expected, to turn certain defeat into unexpected victory through nothing but will and ingenuity. The goblins had spent centuries perfecting their engineering. The humans had built their counterattack in a single night. This was not luck. This was not chance. This was what it meant to be human. And in the centuries that followed, whenever another race planned an attack on human lands, the elders would remind their warriors of the story of Castle Ironhold. Remember the goblins, they would say. Remember what happened when they thought they were clever. Remember that humans are never more dangerous than when they are cornered. Remember that the attack from below became the grave from above. And remember that humanity always finds a way.